Hi, this is Chris of Wilson Wildlife Sculpture. This is a continuation of my earlier video where I demonstrated some finishing skills and all these different hardwoods. I actually stained and oiled this piece of wood, these are interpretive flying birds, and I try to merge it with a swallow. So I'm going to show how I'm going to merge the two in this video, as well as finish these other pieces of wood which I found and collected. I have previous videos on those, so if you see value in this video, please hit that subscribe button, and I appreciate your support. Thanks for following me. So I'm going to show some close-ups of this piece, show you why it came out a little bit dark. Okay, of course the light's a little bit dark there. Let me get on this side, get out of the sun, and you can see the wood, again, very dark. Oak tends to darken a lot when you oil it. And I also stain this. Now I wanted to merge it with a flying swallow, more realistic flying swallow, okay, which is going to be a focal point to the piece. This is my emerging series, and I am inspired by Michelangelo's bound slaves and works that the subject matter is trying to escape from the material that it was created or carved from. So this bird is flying from the piece of cottonwood bark. I like the contrast, but I think the easiest thing to do is to, it's not quite uniform, so I would think the easiest thing to do is to make the cottonwood a little bit darker for it to match the stained oak. Okay, the oak came out much darker than I anticipated in the previous video. So I am going to use some of this red stain. Okay, it's bare, and just add it on here, try to make it a little bit darker. And see if that will help unify the two. So let's give it a shot here. It's always good to experiment, and I think by flooding the surface you can see it getting darker, and that's kind of what I want. I want some more darker colors. I signed it and engraved my name in that corner, so I went ahead and flooded that surface. But I'm making this wood darker to look kind of more like mahogany. And I think it still has that contrast with the blue. So you have about 10 minutes to work with stains before you want to rub off. I'm going to try to get that to set in. The piece was pretty already polished. I like to have my work really well polished, but I think that is going to give a little bit more contrast, a little more, make it a little more red with the base. So it's going to be something like that. But I'm going to let this sit aside, and while I do that, I'm going to show how I oil some of the other pieces of wood. I've got maple, black walnut, cherry, more kinds of oak, and most of the wood, all this wood actually I found. This is the only piece I found, this scrap wood pile at a hardwood store, and that's the kind of thing I do. I use reclaimed wood. It's more responsible, I think, to use reclaimed wood, and it's less expensive, and there's lots of hardwoods growing around in deciduous trees where you are. You just have to gain some knowledge about finding wood. I've got videos on that. I'm going to put this down here, get out of the light. And I'm going to cover the stain here so I don't mix any more stain with oil. And I'm going to oil some different bases here. So I've got Danish oil. You can see the can back there, and I just put it in a can. I demonstrated that in this other video, but you're going to see in this video how these look. So I will first work on this piece because this is a possible sale already. I have a collector who wants a piece, but rather than be a wall piece, she wants it as a freestanding base. So this is a piece of oak that I found. It looks like white oak. And look at that beautiful grain, how it finishes up. I'm going to get a little closer with the video, so now you can see me working how I normally work outside on a beautiful day. Here's my table. And here's the work I'm working on. So this has a bark inclusion, and I like this kind of contrast. It looks more rustic. And the bird in the base, you'll see later in another video, because I try to keep my finished work separate so I don't get oil on my birds. So that swallow I had to put away. But I do have to wipe that stain pretty soon here. But I'm going to allow it to penetrate for 10 minutes. Okay, so it gets dark where I don't finish the wood or sand it very fine. Okay, and it gets lighter where I've sanded and polished the wood. Okay, there's also a difference between sapwood and heartwood, as well as the bark of the tree. So those are factors as well, especially woods like black walnut and black cherry. They have lighter sapwoods and darker heartwoods. This is just a piece of oak that has a bark inclusion, so that's giving the contrast. So there's how it finishes up with oil. I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully it'll match my piece really good. Let me show you a piece of cherry that I'll show what I mean. This is the sapwood and this is the heartwood, and you can start to see the how it finishes. Okay, see the light sapwood is much lighter, and the heartwood finishes darker and more rich. I'm going to have a chipmunk. Actually, I'm going to have a wren, Carolina wren, come from this base. I hope it's going to be enough contrast. I may have to refinish it. Now you can see how the oil goes over some carved texture. I tried to simulate some ground cover for the little wren. And this is another commission I'm working on for a collector. And it's going to have mushrooms and insects as well as a Carolina wren. I've got several bases as options. I'll show you those in a second here. I'm just flooding the surface with oil, and I'm going to sand it in there and polish it later. Again, I demonstrated this in the part 1 version with the big interpretive piece, which I stained and oiled. I'm just showing you some different bases and how different bases finish up. Whenever you add the oil, it darkens the wood. I don't do it in all the areas like some of the bark inclusions, but generally I like to flood the entire surface. It looks better that way. So there's another piece that's done. Okay, now generally you have to go back and add more oil because it'll start, like in looking at this piece, I can see, especially in grain, it's already absorbed that oil, so you want to add a little bit more. So I'm just using a brush from I put the Danish oil in a can, well, just a tin can, and so I add a little bit more, and I can flood that wood for about an hour, and then I'm going to sand it during that time with some wet dry sandpaper, and I'm going to polish it off later. So let's do another base. Let's do this beautiful piece of maple. Now maple finish is pretty dark, so I'm going to give a little test sample here because I don't want the base to be really dark. I like these zone lines. I want some contrast, so I'm going to just brush the zone lines a little bit and not do the whole thing because I can wax it, okay? But I want those zone lines to be a little bit more distinct. So I'm getting very creative and not flooding the entire surface of the maple. Otherwise, it's going to get really, really dark. Well, it can. I polished it, so it's not going to absorb a ton of oil. The higher you polish things, the less oil penetrates the surface. So this is advanced finishing, just like last video where I showed how to use that stain and then oil over the stain. Speaking of which, I did that in this video. I gotta look at the barn swallow after this. Look at that beautiful spalted wood. You can create spalted wood by covering wood with a bag and leaving it like that for like a year under the elements, the heat of the sun, and it's just basically a form of decay. Okay, so I like the contrast what's happening here. I probably won't flood too much more on here. I'll use waxes to finish it. I'm going to look at the barn swallow, okay, and I'm going to add a little oil to it as well. just a little more on top of that stain because it worked with the base, and I'm trying to make it darker. Okay, I definitely made my signature dark and stand out. And I usually wipe, well, I like to sand it in there first. I'm going to sand some of the highlights. But actually I want it dark. That's the whole idea of putting some stain on there. So I don't want to do too much sanding here. I think what I'll do is wipe some of the oil off it. And you can see it is a little darker, but not much. I think I'll add a little oil up here. Being very careful not to get oil on the bird because it's very detailed and painted with oil paints. I'm trying to get the oil just on the wood surface, and you know, it's looking better. I'm happy with that. Let's look at some other bases. Put that away. Let's look at black walnut. Again, this is black walnut that's kiln dried, and we'll compare what it looks like with kiln dried versus air dried wood. And you can see I'm air drying a huge log in the background there, and these are some pieces that came off it. So I like to first start with the end grain because that absorbs the most amount of oil. And then I will go back at the end and give it some more oil, which I need to go back and add to this cherry base and the oak base, what I just showed you, and just flood the surface a little bit more. Again, this is Watco Danish oil finish, and it stains, seals, and protects, giving a natural, deep luster, true color of the wood. Not staining or oiling this. That is black walnut. This is from a hardwood store, I got it from a scrap pile. That's a great way to find wood because a lot of that wood they either burn and it's good wood. Kiln dried wood carves well. I prefer air dried wood. I find it carves even better and has a lot more character, more rustic charm. And that's just my preference. Of course, you can easily get wood like this and laminate because it's smooth. So there are advantages to use hardwood, and that's how I started. I started using wood from a store, hardwood store, and I would laminate huge blocks, and then I would carve those. And the wood's very stable. You don't have to worry about drying wood. So there are advantages using kiln dried wood. You don't have to worry about checking or cracks. But air dried wood, you can see this one. Okay, it does have a check. It has more character. Now this has a finish already on it. I'm just adding a brief coat over it. Okay, so I'm working on numerous bases at once. You might not want to work this fast in so many bases, so you can make sure you get a good finish on one piece at a time. But having done this for over 40 years, I'm pretty confident in these skills I've developed, and I hope I can share them with you. So the sapwood, again, is lighter up here. I kind of like that contrast. Okay, so by putting a fresh coat of oil on this piece, which is several years old, I have just now put new life into this piece. And it's going to have a nice luster. Make sure I get all the spots. Okay, now I'll go back and look at the black walnut. Now, walnut varies quite a bit from different regions of the country. I'm in the southeast, okay, but out in the northwest, you can get Clara walnuts and very beautiful walnuts. This is walnut that's also found pretty around here. The tree fell down in a storm, and I saw a neighbor put an advertisement for actually just free wood. And when I found it was black walnut, I came with my vehicle and trailer and got as much of it as I could. And this wood has been drying for the last 15 years outside my studio. And I've shown you videos in the past. So this wood's not checking too much. It does have some heartwood on it, and when you have heartwood, the work will check or crack faster. But you notice how darker it looks than the kiln dried. don't know if you can see the contrast there. It's much, this piece particularly is very darker and more reddish, and you'll find that, you know, the woods vary quite a bit, especially black walnut varies a lot. So the sapwood back here is getting darker, but not as light as this piece. So it's just, you know, each piece is different. It varies. It's got some interesting black inclusions. I mean, it's almost like the tree was struck by lightning at some point, which could have been the case. And that often causes a really dark streak in wood, which is super cool to look at. Just like the zone lines were cool in looking at this piece. Okay, see how the oil's starting to see that maple a little bit better. Again, I didn't want it too dark, so I'm just adding some oil over the zone lines in this piece now and then. Here's another piece of walnut, and it is much lighter. I'm not sure how that's going to finish, but I'll got to do just a couple pieces at a time here. Then I got to start sanding this wood because I don't want the oil to start to set up. And it sets up, you know, in just a few hours, and you can use it after one night. In fact, it looks better the more coats you put on it. And I'll generally put a few coats of oil on it as well as wax afterwards. I can't show all that in this one video, but I am showing you how, like, I put another piece of oil on this base, and look how much better it's looking. So let me show you some close-ups of this work. You know, I'm going to sand it in next. I'm going to polish it out, but I just want to show you a little bit of close-ups, the details of the work, and how cherries in the foreground. The next piece is oak. This is maple, black walnut, walnut, walnut. I haven't even got to the pieces in the back yet, so I got my work cut out for me. Stay tuned in future videos. Thanks so much for following me. I appreciate your support. Hit that smash button and like and comment. It all helps me. And check out my website too, Wilson Life Sculpture. I have a sale through December, Christmas 2023. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.